We have our guest presenter today, Danielle from Community Energy Association. She's going to be telling us about a couple projects in northern BC and in Alberta. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and Danielle, you're free to take over.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Happy to be here. Great. So thanks for having me again. Yeah, Danielle Wiess, Transportation Lead at Community Energy Association. I'll tell you a bit about us, and then more importantly, a lot about the project that we embarked on this past summer with the support of several funders. So as I mentioned in my previous intro, Community Energy Association, we're the only nonprofit in BC who focuses exclusively on supporting local governments and Indigenous communities. We do this through a series of work streams, I guess you could say, whether it's coaching or building capacity among staff and elected officials. Through planning, helping communities understand what their current emission inventories are and opportunities to reduce those emissions. And then ultimately through implementing some of the solutions. And that's where a lot of the work that I do focuses on. We're made up of, oh, the slide is old, 24 experts, probably like 24 experts who are located around BC and across Alberta, and even as far out east as Ottawa and St. John, New Brunswick now. So we're everywhere doing a little bit of everything. And you can see on the right side of the screen, we've worked with most communities across the province of BC and even more across the rest of Canada now. And our work focuses on helping communities with getting programs off the ground, managing them, and then of course, communicating ultimately the benefits and the solutions that they bring to residents and others that may be in that stakeholder audience. And of course, we have expertise in transportation, buildings, and waste, and I'm going to focus quite a bit on our expertise in transportation today. And just wanted to note that we are a member-based organization. In addition to our ability to provide services for fees, we facilitate a network of public, private sector, and different associations and foundations, as mentioned on the screen, along with several municipalities as represented there across the province. And basically have the opportunity for all of these folks to learn, listen, share, and leverage their experiences to create more impact. We are nearly 7 years away from 2030, which means we have a lot of work to do if we want to achieve our emission reduction goals across the province and in our communities. So we are looking to increase our impact as much as possible. Barb, I see you have raised your hand. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just, for some reason, I thought this was a provincial organization, but it's sounding very much like it's a national organization. Did it start in BC or how did it get going?
Yeah, so Community Energy Association started 27, almost 28 years ago. And we were, at that time, we were initiated by the Ministry, I believe, of Environment to support focused efforts on climate emission reduction and energy reduction. And then maybe less than 2 or 3 years after that, we were spun off to be a nonprofit with charitable status, which is who we continue to be today. And so our mandate is to support local government with climate action initiatives. And of course, if you go way back in time, like 25 years ago, there was few communities across the country, let alone the province, who were doing that. So we did focus our small team and our limited resources on supporting municipalities in the province of BC because that was our place of origin. But as the interest and demand has grown, so has our organization, and that's why we now do work across the nation. We have counterparts across the nation as well who do similar work. So we only really step into projects, in Eastern Canada where there's a lack of expertise that we might bring to the table. And specifically that tends to be around EV charging infrastructure networks because we've done that successfully, and that's what I'll be talking about today. In many places across BC and Alberta, and so people are looking to us for that type of support elsewhere. Thanks for the question.
Thanks.
So a bit about, oh, this is coming through blurry, sorry for that. So what we're here to talk about today, so that was enough about Community Energy Association. What we're here to talk about today is our experience with supporting municipalities and regions across like I said, the country and the provinces, with electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and specifically the development of charging networks. On the screen, you can see the 5 EV charging networks that we have implemented, are implementing in the case of Charge North and Mid-Island EV charging networks, and or intending to implement, that large purple grid there that covers most of central northern Alberta, where there's currently a dearth in infrastructure. So I'm going to talk a bit more about specifically the one project, Charge North, and what we have been working on these past few years. So Charge North, it was an integrated approach. It started in 2019, began with 6 regional districts, 40 plus local governments and Indigenous communities, all sharing and identifying the opportunity that electric vehicle charging infrastructure can bring to their communities. And so the benefits being tourism opportunities, transportation options for residents, and ultimately reduced greenhouse gas emission reductions. And so that integrated approach included both working on level 2 charging infrastructure, level 3 fast charging infrastructure, working with communities, working with dealerships, working with other stakeholders. And most importantly, again, going back to our mandate, working with the local governments, Indigenous communities, and regional districts to bring this vision to fruition. So it's been about 3 phases of work. There was a collaborative planning and feasibility study. How big could this network be? Where would it be? Who would be involved? Phase 2, the necessary but torturous process of finding the funding and signing all the contracts. And so we'll go through that a little bit more as to who ultimately saw the opportunities that this network will bring to the region. And then phase 3, implementing the infrastructure, which is the phase we're in right now. And I can't see the chat, so if there's a question in there, Michael, maybe you could interrupt me, or you can just raise your hand. I can see the raised hand. So I want to take a moment to recognize all of the partners that have made this project possible, so including the 6 participating regional districts, as well as BC Hydro, the government of British Columbia through the Ministry of Transportation, and then of course the over 30 individual municipalities who are ultimately hosting EV charging stations in their community as part of the Charge North network. So building the network, 2 parts to it for Charge North. Ultimately, there's the fast charging network, and then there's a level 2 charging network. So the fast charging infrastructure has been the responsibility of BC Hydro, as they are the utility throughout the region, and also the Ministry of Transportation. They've made use of rest stops throughout the region to install fast charging infrastructure as well. So fast chargers are great. They're needed to support interregional, longer distance interregional travel. They're used to support often tourism and visitors to the region. Typically they are, at least a 30 to 60 minute stop. They're the fastest of the stops, and ideally they're situated at places where people want to rest and hang out for a shorter period of time. Just a note here, that image in the bottom left is from one of our previous networks, Accelerate Kootenays, where to overcome the range challenges of electric vehicles in winter, an electric vehicle charging station was installed at the summit of Rogers Pass, which is a bit of a throwback when you think about it, because it wasn't too long after they actually eliminated the traditional gasoline fueling station at the summit that we installed an EV charging station. And both were there for the exact same reason, which was the challenge of Rogers Pass and the variable weather conditions and so on and so forth, to make sure that someone could get in and out of the pass with support. And ultimately, gasoline powered vehicles are now able to go quite long distances and don't necessarily need to top up while in the pass, whereas EVs are still on that early range journey. So it was kind of ironic to see the one disappear and the other come online. So when it comes to the fast charging network, this is a screen capture from PlugShare. You can see the amount of effort put in by both Ministry of Transportation and BC Hydro to have electric vehicle fast chargers across that region. So the Charge North network extends from Kamloops north to Prince George and all the way west to Prince Rupert. And as you can see there, it's relatively trafficable through a fast charging network right now. And so many thanks to those organizations for implementing those initial charging stations and infrastructure. There's many folks who would say it's not enough, and perhaps they're just right, but it is a first step in the ongoing evolution of electric vehicle travel. So CEA and specifically the participating municipalities and the partners that I showed on the first slide of the regional districts, we have been facilitating the design and installation of the level 2 component of the Charge North network. So as you're all likely aware, they take several hours to fill up or to receive a sizable amount of charge. Most folks stop for at least a couple hours or potentially overnight. And this type of charging will likely keep a visitor in a community for a longer time, enabling them to interact with different attractions, whether it's restaurants, shopping, tourism attractions, nature, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a benefit to having level 2 infrastructure in a community. And so while DC fast chargers tend to be the priority for some folks, level 2s encourage adoption just as well and need to be seen to be developed in tandem. So what is Charge North? It's from Kamloops all the way north to Prince George, a few installations near Fort St. John and up near Fort Nelson, and then primarily along Highway 16 from Prince George west all the way to Prince Rupert, and including Haida Gwaii. Is north a bit on the west side towards Stewart. Stations are going in across the Nisga'a Nation and the Nass area, just northwest of Kitimat and Terrace. So ensuring that there's enough infrastructure all over that region for everyone to be charging electric vehicles. So ultimately it's 58 level 2 chargers in over 30 communities. Most communities are receiving 2 chargers in their community, and there's the odd one that will be receiving more than 2 or less than 2, but that is the intent. So a bit on the installation update. Right now, 7 stations are online. We, of course, started north and worked our way south, trying to beat the snow line. We'll see how we do. So 7 stations, 1 in Fort Nelson, or more specifically, the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. And then 3 of the dual charging stations in Prince George. Some of their municipal amenities are online, and we shifted tactics when it came to installation and are focusing the last few weeks on groundworks and trenching and getting everything that we had to in the ground to avoid running into the winter, which we're going to here soon, if not already in several places. And so that's all been done, but over the next 2 weeks, the subcontracted electricians will be going back and actually installing the charging equipment. So very quickly, 28 more stations will be coming online, which is awesome. For example, places like Sun Peaks, just north of Kamloops, the ski resort, has no charging infrastructure currently in the municipality. So the 4 charging stations that will be coming online and be ready for the upcoming ski season, I anticipate will be much busier than they ever imagined. So it'll be great to demonstrate the use and viability of these stations. It is our intent, of course, to install charging infrastructure alongside education and engagement activities. There is no need, it's not best practice to just install charging infrastructure and not create awareness about why it's there and the benefits it can bring to the community. So we have focused just as much as our time on effort on getting the infrastructure installed as doing the education and engagement. So you'll see some photos on the screen from previous Charge North engagements or from previous engagements in the case of the top left of Accelerate Kootenays, and just showing off to interested folks what are EVs, what are EV charging stations, why they can be seen as an asset to the community, and so on and so forth. So on that note, and part of the reason why I'm here today to share is we did something similar this past summer with regards to Charge North, and we went on what we called the Electric Vehicle Discovery Tour. And we took, as you can see in the photo, this Ford Mustang Mach-E from Kamloops through to Smithers and back, or no, Terrace and back, and stopped at several of the communities that are a part of Charge North. We attended community events and advertised in advance, including sign-up sheets for taking the vehicle out for a test drive. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, we did over 100 test drives across 13 or 14 communities. We spoke with over 400 people. We shared different emotive resources on currently available EV models in the market. We shared their other resource about how to, or what is charging, how does it work, how to get started on your electric vehicle ownership journey, and so on and so forth. And I actually put together a short video, which I'm hoping works here if I play it. Just gonna have to stop sharing for a second and share with sound. So here we go. So I'll just highlight some of the things that you saw in the video there. So as I mentioned, 13 municipalities, it was, or maybe 15, it was a 12-day trip, multiple stops on several days. I traveled, as you can see in this final photo here, with my colleague Carly Johansson. There was many times when we were setting up the booth and chuckling to ourselves, where are we? And who are we talking to today? But overwhelmingly positive experience. I can only really point to one situation where someone took the time out of their day to come over and say something negative to us, but otherwise most test drive bookings were fully subscribed in advance, and or what was left outstanding were picked up on the spot. People were very knowledgeable. They had great questions about the vehicles, and it's just really interesting. Michael's been working in the space for a while, and I not as long, but I've heard from colleagues who have been doing this kind of work for longer than us. The conversation that has changed, folks come up with very pointed and specific questions. And for example, I didn't ever intend to be an expert on the Ford Mustang Mach-E, but I could almost call myself one now, because it wasn't just, oh, what's an electric vehicle? It was, what's the range? How does it charge? How quick does it charge? What's the kilowatt hour per use when driving? So on and so forth. So it was really, really cool to see. And as demonstrated in that video, there was different types of people from all walks of life. Several of the folks that you saw who were photographed were actual EV owners themselves. Maybe they were standing next to their vehicle in some of those photos or not, but they also joined us. We had one of the Emotive super ambassadors in Hugh come out and join us in Ashcroft, showing off his Tesla, which was in one of those photos. And then it was also really neat to see the advancement of electrification elsewhere in and around vehicle use. So That one image you saw was when we stopped at the Prince George Fire Hall, and they were showing off their now fully electric Jaws of Life tool set, I guess is what you would call it. And previously they would have been powered by, you'd have a generator, which would be running the compressor, which would be able to drive the powertrain on those tools. And that in itself presented a series of logistics as to logistical challenges. Where do we set this up? How far away from the scene? If there was a chance of an explosion, like where is a safe spot to have that generator, so on and so forth. And now that those tools are all electric, it's just really streamlined their ability to respond. And so they've increased their efficiency, and it was just really neat to see that electrification is, trickling out from not just how we get around to, but to other areas of our lives as well. I don't know if anyone might have any questions about the EV Discovery Tour, but I'll pause for a second.
I have a question. I'm Jeanette in Vermont. Could you come the next time to Vermont, please?
Yes, of course. Yes, we didn't get to that side of the highway, but we will next time. I was mapping out the trip, and all of a sudden to get to Terrace and back, and because I am based in the Kootenays in BC and had to travel to Kamloops because I had the car leased from somewhere near here, my trip went from being not too long to being almost 2.5 weeks, and I just wanted to come home. So, yep, you're on next year's tour.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, and if not us, this does just speak to the general effort that Emotive continues to support, and other funders, getting people. And actually, I'll just back up for a second. We received this funding. We knew we wanted to create education and awareness around Charge North, around electric vehicles and everything. And, it was still January 2021 when we received the funding, and, thinking about our work plan for the year. And should we do things in person? Should we try to plan to do things in person? COVID was still rather prevalent at the time. I mean, it still is, but, it was still concerning. And then we got closer to the summer and things seemed slightly better, that we could be, outdoors and around people. And so went back to the fact that all of the research to date on how to increase adoption of behaviors comes down to the fact that you need to let people touch it, feel it, try it. And so we came back to where we started, which was we're going on tour and we're taking an electric vehicle with us, and we're showing people that it does and can fit into their life. And ultimately that was a huge success. So yeah, it was totally worth it. And so if not us coming back, there should be an opportunity for different organizations across the region, to apply to Emotive and use their funding to do something identical, if not slightly different. So just expand. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I see there's a question in the chat from Alexandra. Just wondering, so from those discussions in the north, like what were the main kind of concerns or main questions?
As I mentioned, the main questions were like, what is this vehicle's range? How does it decrease in the winter? Is there enough charging infrastructure? Where do I find out more about charging infrastructure? So the fact that there's so many resources out there you can point people to was helpful. Quite a few questions about incentives. So having the summary of incentives that you provided, Michael, was helpful. And then just really talking about, is this actually going to be applicable to my life and my use case? So often that's how I would direct a conversation. People get so caught up on, oh, but it only has 400 kilometers of range. And I said, forget the range. I said, let's talk about what you do on the daily, or what is your regular routine, and then talk to it. And I was like, do you travel more than 300 kilometers, let's say, on that range, and that what you just described? Well, no. And I said, well, do you go somewhere at night where the car is parked and, you could figure out a charging opportunity for it? Well, yeah. And so it bridged that gap between, I don't think this is for me, to, oh, this could actually work for me because my use case isn't that unique or that special, and there was exceptions to that. There were several people who said someone told me they travel 1,000 kilometers a day. It's just not going to work for them. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. You're just going to have to be a later adopter when range increases exponentially and charging times come down. But you know, those were a few exceptions. So of course, being up there, you know, I'm from the Kootenays, so we get winter too. People in central and northern BC think winter is a unique phenomenon. Yes, range is decreased. Is it going to impact you that much? Probably not. And then going back to that use case question, how far do you actually travel in the winter? You know, will limited range actually make a big difference? Because again, if your answer is yes, I travel a lot, okay, then maybe hold off. But if you don't, and you're only doing, you know, in community or maybe in your community and a nearby community kind of travel, electric vehicles can and do work. So it was good. And it was good to be able to have my experience with it and be able to relate to them, even though, you know, and it was even more helpful when we had those different ambassadors with their own personal electric vehicles on site, because it really, you could tell that the people we were speaking to really felt like they weren't being sold something or told something for just, you know, just to our benefit. Not that I personally had a benefit, but you know what I mean.
No, thanks, Danielle.
Hopefully that made sense, Alex. Happy to connect more. Okay, so just a little bit more. The other thing that we'll be doing once the network is installed is working more with Northern BC Tourism Association and other, you know, sub-regional tourism associations across the region about the opportunities that EV tourism can bring to the region. If you remembered from the beginning of my presentation, this was part of the impetus for this, not only bringing visitors and tourism to the region, but then of course, the economic development that additional visitors can bring to a community. So just a few snapshots of different types of tourists or visitors out doing their thing. I especially love this photo of the German Shepherd and the Tesla and the motorbike, and the note from the person who submitted this photos to us said they're already on the wait list for their electric motorbike. So pretty soon this will be an all electric setup, which is kind of cool. And a bit more about tourism. I just wanted to note, you know, we, as mentioned at the beginning, we've done this project for communities across the provinces. The first one we did was called Accelerate Kootenays. And so since that network has been in and operating in 2019, we have worked alongside Kootenay Rockies Tourism to help them develop travel routes for EV tourists and places to go and stop. And part of those routes were used to inform where we might install chargers when we were doing the network. And so we've had similar conversations as we've been installing Charge North with Northern BC Tourism, you know, and just highlighting here that they already have suggested itineraries, so we could integrate into these some of the electric vehicle charging infrastructure that's now available or will be available soon in these communities. And, you know, just that image at the top is taken from their page showing how Malcolm and his family, you know, in their electric vehicle are parked and head out on a hike. And this speaks to that, as well as future opportunities to integrate charging infrastructure at kind of access points to nature trails and whatnot, because that tends to be a very integrated spot for those types of users. And then in addition, I could play this video after we take the question if you want, just a 1-minute advertisement or summary video from Northern BC Tourism about traveling electric across the region. But I saw someone raise their hand, so over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. It's Barb. You're working with tourism agencies, it seems. Are they, or are you working with hotels, hotel chains and so forth about destination chargers in hotels? I know there are some, but it's really spotty and inconsistent.
Yeah, so so this network, Charge North, was purely focused on municipal Installing at locations identified by municipalities, so it's mostly municipal land, so not tourism providers. But through my travels, I noted a bunch of tourism providers who could have used an electric vehicle charging station at their hotel. So great point. That will be our next step, and I come to a slide at the end that talks a bit more about what we can do next. And I'll just say that again, going back, Accelerate Kootenays was the first network we did like this, so we're a little bit evolved in our journey on Accelerate Kootenays, and we are approaching all of the hoteliers and accommodation providers and different attraction providers in the Kootenays right now. There's a sizable amount of funding that we're administering on behalf of Natural Resources Canada to this region, and talking about now that that base infrastructure is in the region, people come here in their electric vehicles, why not take the next step and make them choose to stay at your place or visit your place as opposed to anywhere else? So kind of being that first to market. So yeah, definitely on the radar and definitely something that needs to be tackled. My user example is I was in Smithers, and they already had an existing level 2 charger near downtown Smithers. We were staying at the Prestige. It was about a kilometer away. I was out doing my job and needed a charge and was willing to walk the 1 kilometer between the charger from when I went to bed and got up the next morning. That is not going to be the case for anyone else. So having that charger at the hotel overnight is definitely something we need to address.
Great.
And then the last thing I just wanted to note here about this project is, in addition, so as I mentioned just before about Accelerate Kootenays, we put in the base infrastructure, and now we are starting to evolve the discussion to what more can be done now. And then we've also started conversations about what does the future of electric mobility look like beyond just electric vehicles? What is the whole ecosystem? What is the whole vision? And so we've developed toolkits, and we've done workshops, and we've worked with different communities across the Kootenays to do that work. And we actually did some of that work as well in the Charge North region. So we hosted a workshop for Central and Northern BC, and it was a cross section of folks from municipalities, other types of stakeholders, academia, industry, so on and so forth. And some of these more graphic images on this slide are a summary of what the graphic facilitator at the event captured. And so we are excited now, once Charge North is fully installed and up and running, and I'll just advance the slide here, so you can see up close some of the details and some of the vision that they have for 2040 and bringing some of these things to life. So that little bottom photo at the end, or at the bottom right, sorry, it says things like all vehicles are electric in 2040. Highway 16 is fully electric, plus there's an electric rail system, there's electric motorhomes, there's EV camping networks. They're quiet campgrounds because you can power your site with your electric vehicle, and the use of generators diminishes. There's EV demonstration centers across the communities. They're all connected by different electric mobility routes. So really getting people to think about the opportunity that electric mobility can continue to bring to their region beyond just the charging infrastructure. And that's that part of the presentation. So if anyone has any questions, then I can provide a small update on eVenture, which is in Northern Alberta. I'll just share a page from our organization's website, just a little bit. So eVenture, Northwest Alberta, or just eVenture, is again a similar network looking to go in across Northern Alberta. Just a sample on this page of our logo. Just wanted to show that off in case you recognize it. So basically it's going to install, I just wanted to scroll down here and highlight the different partners taking place. So Drayton Valley, Edmonton, Edson, City of Grand Prairie, MD of Greenview, City of Hinton, City of Rocky Mountain House, and Whitecourt. So several partners, not unlike the other project that I spoke to today. This regional collaborative approach is really what's going to leverage and optimize the funding that these communities have available to contribute, and to unlock additional funding from partners elsewhere. And so this project is still in the funding phase. We're not at the infrastructure part yet. We're looking for a funder to bring it to fruition, and we continue to work on that in earnest. And if I just go back to PowerPoint for 1 second, the original slide. Just show you again what the route would look like. So again, it's the section in purple, it's proposed. But right now, thanks to our previous work in Southern Alberta, that green area, project we called Peaks to Prairies is all connected. So from the west to the east to the south and all the way up to, Calgary being the drivable market that was key to connect to. And so eVenture will do the same on the west side of the province. The key drivable market will be Edmonton, along with Calgary, but predominantly it'll be, the over 1 million people in Edmonton that will then, and potential electric vehicle owners, who will then have access to the entire west side of the province, including along the foothills. And it's notable that the previous networks that we have been involved in, like Charge North, the 2 intersections with the border, both here and here, and then of course Accelerate Kootenays that intersects with the border just across from like Banff Canmore. Right now, if you're an EV owner anywhere in that Charge North region and you wanted to head east, you are looking at a very sad map on PlugShare. So and vice versa, if you're an EV owner on this side of the border and want to head west, you can't get there. So we would like to bridge that gap and bring that project to fruition. And that will be predominantly a level 3 EV charging network with level 2s co-installed at each site, so that there's the option for both for users. Been working on this for a little bit. It started pre-COVID, so I'd like to blame COVID a bit on its delay, and hoping to bring the funding online soon so that we can get started with that project. If and when we're successful with the funding, we'll mirror the approach we took for Peaks to Prairies in Southern Alberta, and that project only took 1 year from funding approval to final station install in that 20 charger network. And we would be looking to do the exact same thing in Northern Alberta. So fingers crossed that all comes through soon and we can get that network done.